Lion King is a live-action, actually CGI, adaptation of the 1994 animation The Lion King. What is this, like the third live-action adaptation we've gotten this year? Guess Disney decided this was the year for it. I was really excited for this movie. I, like most people, am a huge fan of the animation The Lion King. Most people out there consider it the greatest animation of all time. I don't know if for me I would say it's the greatest animation of all time. That's really tough to say, but it would certainly be in my top 3, easily. Lately, I do feel the live-action adaptations we have gotten, though, haven't been quite as good as the animations we've known and loved. The Jungle Book, which came out a few years ago, was, I feel, the last one we got that really hit the mark for me. Like everything about the live-action adaptation of The Jungle Book, it brought back the nostalgia, but it added some different elements that made the movie feel a little more fresh, a little more original. So I was hoping going into The Lion King that we would get kind of the same feel. We have Jon Favreau directing this movie, which he did with the Jungle Book adaptation. I really, really love the voice cast for this movie. And now that I have seen The Lion King, I can say, this was an enjoyable movie, this was a decent movie, but now that I have some time to think about it, it's definitely not without its flaws. I'll say it may be hard for me to do a spoiler review like I usually do for this movie because, I mean, everyone has seen The Lion King unless you were denied a childhood, so you know what this movie's about. You know what happens. Getting into what immediately works for this movie. The musical numbers, the visual effects, amazing. From the opening scene where you have, you know, the Circle of Life song and, you know, you see the sunrise, you see all the animals gathered at Pride Rock to witness Simba being born. Well, maybe not being born, but, you know, introduced to the Pride Lands. You know, that amazing opening scene in The Lion King. The song Circle of Life is in here and it sounds a little bit different. It sounds a little bit more modernized, but it sounds awesome. And visually, it just all looks incredible. Similar to The Jungle Book, nothing in this movie is real. It's all CGI. It's all fake. But whereas with The Jungle Book, they at least had the kid actor who played Mowgli. He was real. Nothing in this movie is real. And that's definitely where I'll give the movie credit with the animal animation, if we want to go there. They all looked exactly how they would in real life. Even when the animals were talking, they just all looked how a lion or a warthog or whatever would look. But I will say, that does for me also lead to one of the flaws that I did have with this movie a little bit. It's the fact that they wanted to make this such a realistic version of The Lion King, such a real version of it. There are some things that the animation just was able to do, because it's animation, that just felt better. For example, I'll start with the scene afterwards when, you know, Scar's preparing to eat the mouse and then Zazu comes in and interrupts his lunch and you have that moment of banter between Scar and Mufasa. In the animation, you more felt like Scar was the one who could come off as, you know, cool, calm, and collected and just flip a switch entirely and just turn into this evil, menacing lion that was gonna kill anyone that stood in his way of what he wanted. In this live-action adaptation, as good of a job as Chiwetel Ejiofor did do as the voice of Scar, you don't really see it in his face, like, you know, if he's coming across, you know, however he's meant to come across. If he's just coming off as, you know, calm or, like, you know, more of a wordsmith as he could do, or just coming off as entirely villainous, because his expression just always stayed the same. I understood why this movie went for that, because the movie's trying to make everything seem real, everything look as real as possible, but the problem with that is when characters are displaying certain emotions, you may hear it in their voice, but you don't see it. And sometimes seeing it, that's what really makes it hit with you more. And that does harken back to what is in the animation. In the animation, you have a little bit more creativity. You can make characters appear a certain way to more express themselves. In the case with animals, anyway. I'm gonna skip around a little bit, but get into the scene where it's the wildebeest stampede, and you know the scene in the animation where Simba sees them coming at him, and he has that face where he's like, oh, fuck, I'm gonna die. In the live-action adaptation, they have pretty much the exact same shot, but Simba doesn't look afraid. He just looks like a normal little lion cub. And, you know, again, I understood why they did that, because that's how a lion cub would look in real life, but it just doesn't convey the emotion. It's even later on in that scene when Mufasa dies. You see in the animation, you know, Simba's, you know, crying, he's sad, and he's like screaming, please, someone come help us. And in the live action adaptation, he has that sad voice, and he's, you know, he's asking for help, but he's not crying. He doesn't have a look of sadness in his face, and for me, it just doesn't hit as hard the way it would in the animation. The other point I want to get across is the musical numbers in this movie. In the animation, the musical numbers, they come off as a little more, I guess you could say, how I say this, maybe unrealistic or a little more extravagant, a little more cartoony. But granted, you feel like that's how musical numbers are supposed to come off, especially in Disney animation. Like a few musical numbers I'll bring up in particular, like I Can't Wait to Be King, Be Prepared, Can You Feel the Love Tonight? In the animation, they were, to a degree, maybe a bit over the top, really musical-like, to really like send out the feel, send out the essence of the tone that each song was representing. But because this is live action, because Jon Favreau wanted this to appear as realistic as he could make it, when some of these musical numbers happen, when those same musical numbers happen, they for me felt a little bit more bland. Like with I Can't Wait to Be King and the animation, yeah, the animals just collectively really coming together to make this really great musical number. They kind of have the same thing in the live action adaptation, but it wasn't as, how do I say this? It wasn't as unique. It wasn't as Disney, I guess I could say. Then deal with Be Prepared, like, you know, in the animation, he's got like an army of hyena around him, and you got lava coming out everywhere. In the live action, can't do that because that's just not real. That was also my issue with, you know, Can You Feel the Love? In the animation, you really felt a romance blossoming between Nala and Simba as the song was going on. In the live action, I will say, as great as Donald Glover and Beyonce were singing that song together, I didn't as much buy the romance as I did in the animation because the emotion's just not as conveyed as much. I do want to get into some of the positives in this movie. Obviously, Timon and Pumbaa were the comic relief in the animation. Here in the live action adaptation, once again, those two are freaking awesome. Just the way Billy Eichner and Seth Rogen voiced the two of them, it really did sound a lot like they did in the animation. That for me was really where the nostalgia came out because they're cracking the same jokes, they're bringing up Hakuna Matata. It's great seeing the way they bring Simba under their wing, showing them their way of life. It delivers some really funny moments that really bring back the memories that you're hoping for in a movie like this. But I do want to also say, one of the issues that I personally had with this movie, and that may not speak for everyone, but is the fact that this movie was essentially a shot-for-shot remake of the animation. Like, we got live-action adaptations this year of Dumbo and Aladdin, and where I'll at least give them both credit is each of them tried to add something new. They tried to do something different to make it feel a little more original, even though it is a live-action adaptation. Whether it was a little tweak with one of the characters, whether it was just a little bonus storyline added in, they wanted to do something to refresh it. And going into this movie, you know, Jon Favreau, the producers, the writers, all of them were trying to make it out like, oh, don't worry, we are gonna have new things, we will have something different. But really, I gotta be honest, as I was watching this movie, because, I mean, I've seen the original Lion King millions of times, as I was watching this movie, nothing really felt different. It all felt exactly the same. I mean, the only thing I guess I could say they did do that was a little differently is one of the hyenas, the hyena that was Ed in this live-action adaptation. You know, in the animation, he was just a stupid hyena. He never talked. He was just weird. He was just crazy. In this one, they actually made him a legit character towards the Bonsai and Shenzi hyenas, but in this one, I didn't really like the take they did with him. Don't get me wrong, he was still funny. He was still funny. He was still a unique character, but I don't know, there's something about having like that really crazy, stupid third wheel among the group of villains that just adds a little bit more comic relief. More effective comic relief, I guess I could say. Aside from that though, that's maybe really the only thing they added in this movie that was really different for me. So I guess that's what I could tell anyone who wanted to go into this movie. If you wanted just a complete retelling, a complete live action retelling of The Lion King, then yeah, you're gonna go into this movie and you're gonna absolutely love it. If you're like me though, and you want to see something different, something a little more original, you may be a little disappointed. But I do understand why the creators behind this movie would maybe want to take the route of making it a complete rehash, because they're probably thinking in their head, if we tweak something different, fans who love the original are going to be pissed off at us. The idea is to get the audience into the seats. The idea is to get as many people possible into the seats. And if people aren't going to respond positively towards it, then it's going to mean bad things. So we're probably thinking, like, everyone just loves the original Lion King, let's just make it that. I will say, I guess I'll also say this, they also do one thing with Sky that was a little bit different. In this case, when he takes over Pride Lands after he tells everyone, hey, Mufasa and Simba are dead, now I'm king. He is trying a little harder to get Sarabi to be his queen, but she doesn't want to be his queen, so that's kind of what led into the Pride Lands becoming, like, complete just shit. But I didn't think that was something that was like completely different or completely original enough for the movie for me, because I feel like in the animation there was something still along the lines of that. In this one, maybe they're just a little more upfront with it, but it wasn't different enough for me. And then, you know, soon enough it leads to the final third of this movie, and yeah, pretty much everything's the same. You know, you have Rafiki finding Simba and telling him to move on from the past, move forward, and then he goes back to the Pride Lands to take on Scar. They had that big final battle, which again, it's pretty much the exact same thing as you accepted it, you know, line for line, shot for shot. And don't get me wrong, it was entertaining. It brought back nostalgia. Visually, it looks incredible. I guess what takes away some of the suspense is when you know exactly what's gonna happen, you're kind of sitting there just like, I mean, this is gonna happen now. Okay, now this is gonna happen. Cool, it's a wrap up. All in all, for me, The Lion King was a decent movie, but I was hoping for a little bit more from it. Visually, this movie is gorgeous looking. This will probably, in all likelihood, win the Oscar for Best Visual Effects. I would be very surprised if something else tops this. It's impressive seeing the way they made all the animals look realistic from point A to point B. Every animal looked like an actual animal. Like, there was no expression that made anything look differently. It all looked real. The voice acting in the live-action movie was great. For the most part, I don't think there's a single voice actor that I would have done differently. I think they made very good choices in hand selecting each person to voice the certain character. I think they did well there. They all, for the most part, sounded like they do in the animation. Again, I guess they ideally wanted to be as much like the animation as they did, so that's the route they went for. The musical numbers are great. The scene in this movie is very well done. I thought that was very important. But that being said, because they tried to make everything look so realistic, I feel like some of the musical numbers took a bit of a hit from that, the setting of them anyway. I thought the lack of emotion from pretty much every character in this movie, that really hindered some moments in the movie. And like I said, the movie is basically a complete retelling of the original Lion King. And I will say, if you're looking for that, you'll love this movie. If you weren't looking for that, you'll have some flaws with this movie, like I do. In the end, although this movie was enjoyable, for me anyway, I was hoping it would have ended up being a bit more of a unique take on the Lion King. So that's all I gotta say, guys. Thank you so much for watching my video. Don't forget to leave a comment, like, subscribe, and I will see you all next time.